Old School Essentials is probably the most popular retro clone of D&D being published today. If you're into traditional old school D&D, especially Moldvay and Cook's basic and expert editions, OSE is probably your best option. It cleans up the rules, reorganizes them for ease of reference, and has a beautiful, durable hardback format. However, one question that I get a lot on this channel is which version of Old School Essentials to buy. This comes from the fact that if you go onto Necrotic Gnome's website, OSE comes in a good half dozen different formats, which can be fairly confusing to people just getting into old school D&D. So today I'm going to break it down for you. We're going to look at all of the different versions of the OSE rules that are currently available and those that are coming in the near future to help you decide which of them is best for you. As always, links to where you can get the physical and digital versions of these books will be down in the description below. The first thing that you need to realize is that Old School Essentials has two different lines of products when it comes to rules. You got Classic Fantasy and Advanced Fantasy. Anything that says Classic Fantasy on it is a restatement of those original basic and expert rules. It doesn't try to add any new material or try to innovate on the rules, it just makes them clearer and easier to use at the table. If you want to stick to just those classic rules, then you have a couple of options. The easiest and most readily available version is the Classic Fantasy Rules Tome. This is a 228-page book that compiles all of those rules into a single volume. It's got everything that a DM or a player might need. If you want to spring for a more deluxe version of these rules, then what you want is the Old School Essentials Classic Game Set. This is a box set, so instead of all of the rules being in a single volume, they're broken up into 5 smaller hardback volumes. For example, all the monsters are in one book, all the spells are in another, and so on. Not only do all of these look really cool, and I have a flip-through review of it on my channel if you want to see more, but it has the practical advantage of allowing you to spread the rules around the table. The wizard can be looking up spells in one of the books, while another player uses the character book to build a PC, and the DM uses a monster book to look up stat blocks. A new reprinting of the box set was kickstarted pretty recently and should be available by the end of the year. But until that happens, you might be able to grab older versions of it on eBay or similar places. Now, if you're looking for just the player-facing rules for the Classic Fantasy, what you want is something called the Classic Fantasy Player's Rules Tome. It's shorter and less expensive than the full rules tome or the box set, and great for handing out to new players who don't necessarily need all of that DM material. So all of that is the Classic Fantasy line. The other line of OSE products is called Advanced Fantasy. Advanced Fantasy is actually an interesting idea. What it does is it takes a lot of the material and concepts from Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, or First Edition, and rewrites it in such a way as to integrate it seamlessly with those classic fantasy rules. This includes stuff like new monsters, spells, magic items, as well as options for character building like splitting race and class. This mirrors something that a lot of players back in the day did anyway. They would start off with the Moldvay and Cook rules, and then get all excited by all of the crazy material that was in the AD&D books and try to mash them together. Basic D&D and AD&D are pretty compatible, so this isn't really too hard to do, but the material is still scattered all over the place and it doesn't always mesh together perfectly. The Advanced Fantasy line is designed to fix that. Unlike the Classic Fantasy rules, which pride itself on sticking strictly to the source material, Advanced Fantasy involves some interpretation on Gavin Norman's part because of how he has to get all these concepts to fit together, but I think he pulls it off wonderfully. At the moment, there's 2 ways to get the Advanced Fantasy rules. The first way is to buy a pair of books, the Advanced Fantasy Player's Tome and the Referee's Tome. These 2 books combine the classic and advanced rules into a single rule set, and then split it into a player-facing and a DM-facing book. I think all of these rules were never put together into a single volume the way that Classic Fantasy was, just because the page count would be very high and the book would be pretty cumbersome at the table. The second way to get the Advanced Fantasy rules is a box set called the Advanced Expansion Set. This was also kickstarted recently, and like the Classic Fantasy box set, it takes all of the advanced rules and breaks them down into 4 smaller books that you can distribute around the table. It should also be available for general purchase by the end of the year. Unlike the Advanced Fantasy Player's Tome and the Referee's Tome, it does not combine the Classic and Fantasy rules. The box set just has the advanced rules by themselves. If you want to combine it with the classic rules, you would also get the classic box set and use all 9 of those small books at the same time. One neat thing about going whole hog on all of these box sets is that it lets you easily customize the rules that you want just by choosing which of these smaller books you're going to permit. I believe that Gavin also has more of these mini hardbacks planned for the future that would add in rules for other settings or other genres, allowing for even more customization. So there's my guide to buying OSE rulebooks. Hopefully it's helpful for you and makes it easier to get into the crazy world of old school D&D. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more reviews and guides like this one, and you can subscribe to the Questing Beast newsletter if you want to keep up with the new releases and news from the old school Renaissance. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time.